야, 이거 진짜 상징적인 거네.
A little while ago, I made a video about The Hunger Games and its near-perfect opening scene. I talked about what made it so great, and also what made it not as great as it could have been. I had a lot of fun making that, and I really do think The Hunger Games has a phenomenal opening scene, even if it isn't perfect. So, if The Hunger Games doesn't have a perfect opening scene, I want to talk about a movie that I think does. And as you've probably figured out by now, I'm talking about Parasite. Parasite has a very ordinary opening scene. If you're watching this film for the first time, you probably wouldn't think much of it. I didn't think much of it. But when you revisit it, you realize that there is so much to love about it. It's no secret that Parasite is a deeply metaphorical film. It's like every frame has something going on that points to a larger story. There's a ton of amazing video essays about Parasite that really go in depth about its symbols and metaphors, and I think they're all worth watching. But what's so fantastic about Parasite is just how many of those symbols it managed to fit into the first few minutes alone. So let's talk about this opening scene. Well, actually, I don't want to talk about the whole scene at first, I just want to talk about the first 40 seconds. I have edited out some dead space for copyright reasons. My first video about Parasite got slapped by legal, which wasn't fun, and I really don't want to repeat the experience. So, without further ado, let's take a look. This 40 seconds at the very beginning of the movie is literally just a shot of a window and some socks before the camera moves down to show us our main character, and it's brilliant. Let's talk about the window and levels first. Windows are significant in Parasite, as they can denote the social standing of different characters. The Park family lives on top of this great big hill, and one of the focal points of the house is this giant window. We see it over and over and over again throughout the film, representing that the family is incredibly well off. In contrast, we have the squatters in the basement. The housekeeper Mung Kwang and her husband Kunse are living completely underground. There are no windows whatsoever, and without windows, they have no light. Not only is there no way to see the outside world, but Kunse specifically cannot go above ground without putting himself in danger. And then we have the Kim family, who live in a semi-basement. They have small windows, all of them sitting above their heads, close to the ceiling. The light that comes into their house is pretty dim and weak, which is in direct contrast to the light coming in through the Park family's window, which is bright and strong. The Kim family's windows are a visual representation of their situation. They have one foot on both sides of this. They live underground in a basement, but they still have those precious windows. They have the hope of potentially being able to pull themselves above ground and achieve what the Park family has. Starting the movie with a shot of the window shows us the aspirations of the entire movie, pulling themselves up the ranks of class. It's just a window, and yet it's setting up so much more for the rest of the story. The second thing about this clip are the socks. Aside from the window, the very first thing we see of this movie are socks drying on this little thingy hanging from the ceiling. And this is an interesting visual, because I don't think I've ever seen socks dried like this. But it's yet another important shot. Socks are naturally seen as dirty. I mean, they go on our feet, which are the lowest parts of our body, and yet in this scene, they're seen suspended over the main character, Kyu's head. Just like how the window sits above all of the characters' heads, showing how low they are in comparison to other characters, the socks hanging above Kyu's head is a subtle show of how Kyu is lower than low. He's worse than even the dirtiest, lowest of objects. The final thing about this clip I want to talk about is the camera movement itself. The very first movement we see in the film is downwards. We start up high, then deliberately move down until we see Kyu, and once again, this is so telling of the character's social standing. Throughout the film, levels are used to denote how privileged different characters are. As Kyu goes to the park house for the first time, he's heading continuously upwards. When people enter the park house through the garage, they climb up a set of stairs, and when Kyu, Kijang, and Kitek escape the park house, they move continuously downwards, back to their semi-basement. Movements up and down show us where people stand, and it's a significant visual separation between us and them. Showing it to us this early on in the film, along with the window and the socks, is some of the greatest thematic setup I think I've ever seen. And all of that happens in literally the first few seconds of the movie. If we continue through the scene, we get introduced to the rest of the family and the first supposed conflict of the movie, the family not having any Wi-Fi. They've been leeching off other people's Wi-Fi, and whoever they were leeching off before just put a password on their network.
와이파이 높게 들어야 돼 높게. 구석구석 사사시 그저 해야 돼.
잡힌다.
진짜? 잡혔어?
잡히지. 이거 커피 나라 투지.
왜 나 안 잡히지?
일로 바싹 올라와봐. 잠깐만. 여기 있네. 피자 시대.
They finally find a Wi-Fi signal, but only by crouching on the little dais the toilet is on. Like with the socks, this is an interesting setup we've got going on here. When they're standing on the floor, the toilet is held above their heads. And again, we see something seen as dirty positioned above our characters. And it's even more insulting with the toilet. At least with the socks, they could take them down from the ceiling. But with the toilet, they can't change the situation. The toilet has always been above them and will always remain that way. They are literally lower than crap, further cementing their status in the world. Kyu and Kijung have to squeeze themselves in next to the toilet, aka pull themselves up to the toilet's level, to be able to get the basic need of Wi-Fi, something that a lot of people take for granted. After getting a Wi-Fi connection and realizing the delivery girl from Pizza Time is coming by for boxes, the entire Kim family gets down to work, assembling the boxes before she arrives.
소독해?
요즘도 저런 걸 하네.
그러게요.
창문 닫아.
나도 봐. 공짜로 집안에 소독도 하고 곱등도 없애고.
요새 곱등이 너무 많아. 냄새. 내가 아까 닫으라 그랬지?
받을까요?
Now, fumigation is the disinfecting or purifying of a specific area using chemicals. It's normally used to suffocate and kill bugs and other pests, and it's pretty invasive and time-consuming, requiring people to vacate their homes for up to a week. And yet, this dude is just casually fumigating the street without a care in the world. We know the other residents of the street are still here since we saw people walking about earlier, but the fumigation continues. And Kichek's insistence that they keep the windows open and allow the chemicals in is yet another hint to their status. They are the things that these chemicals are trying to get rid of. They're the pests in their own home. And while the other three members of the family can barely function because of the chemicals, Kichek's box folding speed increases. He starts folding with a new vigor, holding his breath and withstanding the harmful chemicals. He survives, not unlike the way a cockroach can survive anything. His wife Chung-suk even calls him a cockroach later on in the movie.
이거 지금 우리 집이야? 어? 아늑하잖아?
아늑해? 그래. 또 이러다가 갑자기 박 사장이 딱 집에 온다 쳐봐. 김기택 2인가? 바퀴벌레처럼 샤샤샤샥 숨겠지?
And Kichek really is the cockroach of the film. In the end, the rest of the family loses everything. Kijung dies, and Kyu and Chung-suk get charged for their crimes. Kichek, however, escapes all of that. Even after likely killing Mr. Park, he escapes the consequences by hiding out in the secret basement of the Park house. Now, obviously, this comes with its own consequences, namely never being able to be free ever again, and of course shoving himself even further down the ladder of social status. But he survives, just like a cockroach. Cockroaches cling onto the world even when there is nothing to cling onto, and that's exactly what Kichek is like. So, in this scene, while everyone else succumbs to the fumigation, Kichek powers through, just like a cockroach. When the family is finished with the boxes and the delivery girl arrives, she notices that a quarter of the boxes are folded poorly, aka the quarter that Kitek did. She refuses to pay them in full for their shoddy work, which obviously pisses off Chung-suk. But before the conversation can turn into a full-blown argument, Kyu intervenes.
정말 돈 10% 떼고 주겠다는 거예요, 지금? 인건비 이거 얼마나 한다고? 너무한 거 아니에요?
불량 박스 하나하나가 얼마나 큰 데미지를 주는지 알아요? 우리 브랜드 이미지에?
박스 접을 사람도 하나 없는 것들이, 아?
뭐라고?
사장님, 다 그 친구 때문이죠.
뭔 소리?
그 원래 일하던 알바생 말입니다. 그 친구가 배 찍어 잠수 탔죠. 이 주사랑 껴서 이 단체 주문이 막 들어오고 있는 이 중요한 시점에
이런 디테일은 또 어떻게 알아요?
내 동생 지인이에요.
아이 그 오빠가 원래 좀 이상해요. 이 동네에서 평판이 되게 안 좋은데.
그래서 말입니다, 사장님. 페널티 10% 좋습니다. 그 대신에 이참에 알바생 새로 뽑으실 생각 없으세요?
알바는 자르세요. 해고 페널티를 주시라고.
내일 정식으로다가 면접 보러 가겠습니다. 몇 시가 좋을지.
아니 저기 잠깐만 생각을 좀 해보고.
그러면 저희 박스 돈부터.
Watching this interaction is so interesting because it tells us everything we need to know about these people. The first 40 seconds of the film showed us the themes. The clip of them folding pizza boxes reinforced that theme and foreshadowed the outcome of the characters. But this right here shows us everything we need to know about their characters. Kyu has this nice guy act that he puts up, and even though we've only seen him for a few minutes so far, we can already tell that there's a level of fakeness to him right now. He starts talking to this girl about how he understands her struggle, what with their part-time delivery guy flaking on them all the time. Ki-jung comes over and she compliments Kyu's nice guy act with her own sort of mysterious compellingness, backing him up like it's the most natural thing in the world. And when Chung-suk joins them, it completes the trio. Suddenly, the conversation has shifted from paying the family in full to offering Kyu a job, and it's like a magic trick. You don't exactly know how it happened, only that it somehow did, and this is your reality now. The three of them have the delivery girl cornered, pushing her past anything she signed up for when she came here today. Quite literally, too. This entire time, the camera has been slowly but surely pushing closer and closer to them, until Kyu and Chung-suk become the edges of the frame. It's so slow, in fact, that you don't even realize it's happening, much like the change in subject in the conversation they're having. They're essentially suffocating her until she breaks. The idea of Kyu getting a job at the pizza place is so overwhelming that she ends up paying them in full, which is what the family wanted in the first place. And this clip is the cherry on top of the last phenomenal 5 minutes. It shows us one of the biggest things we need to know about this family. They're smart. They're capable. They're skilled, incredibly so. They could absolutely have so much more in their lives, especially the kids. But they don't, because they don't have the resources to be more. They don't have the time or the money to be better, which is a shame, because they clearly have promise. On top of that, this clip sets up the plot that the rest of the film will follow, the family conning their way into jobs. This is basically the same thing Kyu does with the Park family, just on a much smaller scale. And it's brilliant that we get to see this happen now, because when he does it again with the Parks, it's very believable. From this one clip, we know he and his family are smart, skilled, and capable. But smart, skilled, and capable are just nicer ways of saying cunning, manipulative, and calculating. And when you're on the bottom rungs of life, desperate to climb the ranks, that's exactly what you have to become. And even if you do become that, you still might not succeed. After all, Kyu didn't get the job at the end of this clip. He gets the second best option. And he doesn't climb the ranks in the rest of the film. He doesn't become the successful, wealthy man akin to Mr. Park. He gets the second best option, the very job he wanted from the delivery girl. No matter what, they will never achieve what they truly want. I think I've made it abundantly clear that Parasite is one of my favorite films. It does so much and does it all extremely well. There is not a moment of this film that is wasted or subpar. It's honestly one of the most efficient, well-written stories I've ever seen, and that's right from minute 1. The opening scene of Parasite is incredible, and the opening 5 minutes is even better. In less than a minute, Bong Joon-ho manages to show us the main themes of the film without saying a word. In 5 minutes, Bong has effectively set up the direction the entire film is going in, even if we don't know it just yet. The film is a masterpiece, and I can say with confidence that the opening is indeed perfect.